All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are with the Week 20 practice test. So we have these slightly more complicated angle problems now, and they're really only slightly more complicated if you just go through and take your time, remember those basics that you learned. Remember supplementary angles, complementary angles, adjacent, vertical angles. You'll do just fine with this. All right, so let's go through and see how they got their answers. So A is really straightforward. To get angle A, you want to think of this line. You want to remember supplementary. This total, when you do these two angles together, they're going to total 180 degrees. So if you know that those two angles together are 180 degrees, then you know that angle A plus 150 has to equal 180 degrees. To solve that, you're going to take away the 150 from both sides, just like those equation solving skills that you did. And when you take those away from both sides, you get A is equal to 30 degrees, and that's our first answer. So B is a little more complicated. Let's zoom in on our triangle here to do B. So we just figured that this is 30 degrees. This is 48 degrees. How do I know it's 48 degrees? Because I know that there's a vertical angle. I can see that these two lines cross, and these are on opposite sides of those crossing lines. So now I want to know, how much is angle X? Now the reason I want to know X is, if I can figure out X, I can figure out this one, which I'm going to call angle Y, and as soon as I know Y, I know B, because those are vertical angles. So I worked backwards. I said to myself, what do I need to know? What's the fastest way to get B? Well, if I could get Y, I could get B, vertical angles. Okay, how would I get Y? Well, I already know A, so if I knew this angle, then I could use the triangles equal 180 to get Y. So how do I get X? Well, I get X by looking at this right angle, which means that that's also a right angle. If you have two lines that intersect and they're perpendicular to each other, we know this line again, that same way that I drew that was 180, I know that that's also 180. So if this half is 90, then that half is 90. So then to get angle X, I know that 48 plus X equals 90. I'm going to take away the 48, take away the 48, and X is equal to 90 take away 48, 90 take away 40 is 50, take away 8 more, 42 degrees. So this is equal to 42 degrees. So then the last step is to get Y. To get Y, I'm going to go with what I know about triangles. When I look at this whole triangle right here, I've got a triangle right there. I know that that whole triangle, the total of that triangle, is 180 degrees. So to get angle Y, which will give me angle B, I know that 30, right here, right there, 30, plus 42, right over there, plus Y has to equal 180 degrees. Well, 30 and 42 is 72. So 72 plus Y is 180. And if I take away the 72 and take away the 72, I'm left with Y is equal to 180 take away 70 is 110. Take away 2 more, 108. That is, let me just be really careful I don't give you the wrong idea here. This is 108, and since these are vertical, this is also 108 from a vertical angle. And that's my solution to number 1. You can do this stuff. It's going to take a little time, but you can definitely do this. I have no doubt in my mind. All right, number 2. All right, so problem number 2, here are the answers. And I really can't show you how to do this in the video other than to tell you that when you measure these things out, for example, to get 35 feet, 35 feet means that you have 5 sections that are each 1/2 centimeter. That's how you get 35 feet. So as you look at these, just remember you have to go back to this fact that each 1/2 centimeter is 7 feet. So you can compare your answers here, and then we'll actually do these in class together. We'll get rulers out and work on these. All right, let's go to the next set. So in this case, what you're asked to do is take those rules that you know about complementary, supplementary angles, about angles that are congruent, which means same size and shape, angles that are adjacent, maybe angles that are vertical, and use that to answer these questions. So first off, supplementary angles are also adjacent angles. Well, that's sometimes true. Not always true. Remember, supplementary means adds up to 180 degrees. That's what supplementary means. So if you had 2 angles that were separated, if you had an angle right here that measured, let's say that that's 50 degrees, and over here totally spread away from that, you had an angle over there that was 130 degrees. Well, those aren't adjacent. Adjacent means next to. Remember, they have to share. Let me just draw an adjacent set of adjacent angles. Remember, adjacent angles have to be angles that share a vertex and they share one side. So if you had these 2 angles, if this was your 50 right here, and this was your 130, then yes, they would be both supplementary and adjacent. But these are also supplementary. They still add 50 plus 130. They still add to 180, even though they're not touching each other. B, if 2 lines intersect, the adjacent angles are supplementary. Well, yes, if you have 2 lines that cross, so if I have a line and a line, and I call this angle X, and I call this angle Y, X plus Y are going to equal 180 degrees, and X and Y are adjacent because they share that vertex and that side. C, if the measure of an angle is represented by X, then its supplement is X minus 180. Yeah, we can go back to this one right here. X plus Y equals 180, which means, if you took that a step further, to go to this next question, which means 180 take away the X is going to equal Y. And finally, supplementary angles are also congruent. Well, they can be congruent. The only time supplementary angles are congruent is if they both equal 90 degrees. Remember, congruent, the term congruent means, for angles, it means same size. So angles are congruent if they are the same size. For supplementary angles, here are two angles. They total 180. They share a vertex right there. Let me pick up a different color, easier to see. They share a vertex. They share a side. They are the same size because they're both 90 degrees. So those would be congruent. But we've already talked about the fact that you can have supplementary angles that aren't congruent. If I have these two angles, they're still going to total up 180. So you're still going to have maybe 80 degrees over here and 100 degrees over here. So there's still angles that are supplementary, but they aren't congruent. They aren't the same shape. They aren't the same size. All right. Graph the solution on a number line. So first off, we know from the fact that that's a negative that the sign's going to change direction. We're going to end up dividing by a negative. Now, we talked about what can you do on a problem like this to get rid of the fraction. And what I would do on this problem to get rid of the fraction is I would multiply both sides by 2. Over here it would look like 2 over 1. Over there it's just going to look like 2. When I do that, these cancel out. I still have to do the 2 times the 12. So when let me go back a step. Let me break that down differently. So when I go ahead and do the rainbows, still got a rainbow that, rainbow this. So when I do the rainbow, I'm going to have 2 over 1 times negative 3 over 2x plus 2 times 12. Don't really need to make that 2 over 1 greater than 30 times 2. Here, the 2's are going to cancel each other out, and we're just left with 1 times negative 3x. Here we've got plus 24 greater than 60. Take away the 24 from both sides. I didn't draw it, but you know we're doing the same thing both sides. Take away the 24 from both sides. 0 pairs right there. Negative 3x here. 60 minus 24, 36. Divide by negative 3. Got to make sure you divide by the negative. Always have to divide by that coefficient. That leaves x. We divided by a negative, so that changes directions. 36 divided by negative 3 is negative 12. And there's our answer. And then we're going to need things that are less than negative 12. Problem 7. So Tom wants to rent a chop saw to do a home project. The company charges $18 per hour. There's the 18 per hour. And they also charge a $22 non-refundable deposit. Tom wants to spend less than $130. Less than $130. Graph up how long Tom can rent and stay on budget. And notice here on our number line, so we end up with h is less than 6. We don't have to worry about the sign changing directions, nothing negative. You solve it out, you get h is less than 6. Notice when we graph it, we graph from 6 to 0. We don't include 0. We don't graph negative numbers on a problem like this. You can't rent for negative hours. That doesn't make any sense. You also wouldn't rent for 0 hours. Tom's not an idiot. He's not going to walk in and go, hey, here's a $22 deposit. I guess I won't rent the saw. So 0 is not going to be included. So it's anything between 6, and it could be 6, all the way down to anything bigger than 0. So it's those two in between. All right, so that gives you an idea on the practice test. Hopefully you've taken the time to look at this. We'll go over it in class as well, but this gives you a little opportunity to study. You can add this studying to what you do with your Week 19 test. Go over that as well. really give yourself a chance to be successful on the Week 20 test.